Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from veteran boxing scribe Fernando Sabatini as it pertains to what could be the undisputed flyweight title fight between the two remaining champions, Gabriela Fundora, who holds the IBF, and Gabriela Alaniz, who has the three other titles. They inform me that Gabriela Fundora's team decided not to delay any longer and take another path.
What?
The offer that Golden Boy sent to Gabriela Alaniz for undisputed was rejected. Dulce Veneno will defend her IBF flyweight title against someone else on August 10th in LA.
So that's saying that Golden Boy tried to make the undisputed title fight between the two remaining champions at this weight, but Team Alaniz did not like the money.
Not surprised? A Gabriela Fundora fight is a lot more dangerous than what Gabriela Alaniz just experienced with Marlena Esparza. Marlena Esparza is a more modest-sized flyweight and a much lighter puncher than Gabriela Fundora.
Gabriela can punch.
And not just punch, Gabriela can punch, she can box, she can use her height and her length to manage the distance and walk you into something hard.
See how she picks at her opponent with a lead hand with the jab.
Controlling the range, takes a half step back and walks her right into a right hook. Because the height differential is so dramatic between Gabriela Fundora and almost everybody else at this weight, getting close enough to her to land some punches could be quite difficult because she's not just a strong puncher, she's a good boxer.
Where Gabriela Alaniz is more of a brawler, more of a mid-range to inside combination puncher.
Ill-equipped for this assignment, I think, as you have to get there. You have to get mid-range to inside on Gabriela before you can land anything, and in doing so, you may come under heavy fire.
Don't get me wrong, mid-range to inside against almost any other fighter at this weight, mid-range to inside Gabriela Alaniz is good. She's formidable.
But that'd be a really tough assignment. Tall order against Gabriela Fundora. Pun intended.
You see how she keeps a bit of space between herself and her opponent, just enough that she can get the arm out.
Get full extension to throw those straight punches and drive them. She doesn't smother her own work. She gives herself enough room to work and add torque to the punches.
She's got great distance control.
Gabriela Alaniz may have been willing to travel to America for Marlena Esparza, then unified champion in possession of 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight. She may have been willing to travel to America for her. But for Gabriela Fundora, it's a very different proposition. It's a much more dangerous fight, and Team Alaniz know that.
Thus, the undisputed title fight between the two remaining champions at this weight does not look to be happening in the near future, so I can only assume that Gabriela's next opponent in August will be someone in the IBF's rank standings. Currently, former champion of Mexico, Lourdes Juarez. She's ranked at number 1.
In terms of experience, Lourdes does have a lot more of it than Gabriela Fundora, but then again, you could have said the exact same thing about Arely Musinho, and look at what Gabriela did to her. Maybe Gabriela ends up fighting her in August?
Or France's own Mary Connon, who's ranked at number 2.
I don't think she's going to end up fighting former champion Marlena Esparza, who's ranked at number 3. I think Marlene, she'll move up now from flyweight up to superfly. Ranked at number 4 is Mexico's own unbeaten up-and-comer, Marilyn Badillo.
She's one to look out for.
As well as former WBO light flyweight champion Tenkai Tsunami of Japan at number 6. At number 7, unbeaten up-and-comer Chloe Watson.
She's got a fight coming up.
There's former champion Arely Musinho ranked at number 8, but I don't think she wants to fight Gabriela again. An interesting character in Laura Wallenman, ranked at number 9, Colombian-born, Switzerland-based fighter.
She's ranked at number 9, a personal favorite of mine. Alexis Kubitsky is ranked at number 10. At number 11, you have Jackie Calvo.
Number 12, you have Viviana Corredor.
At number 13, you have Yairineth Altuve. And essentially what I'm getting at is this is a very deep division that even if the undisputed title fight isn't happening yet, there are any number of other good fights that you can make. And I get the sense that whoever Gabriela Fundora fights next, it will be someone in the IBF's rankings.
In men's bantamweight news, 3-division champion Junto Nakatani has told Ring Magazine that he would most like to unify against reigning WBA champion Takuma Inoue, the younger brother of Naoya Inoue. When asked which champion would he most like to face, he replied, Takuma Inoue. He's highly regarded too, so I would like to fight him. However, to be honest, any champion in the same weight class is fine.
There are 4 champions at this weight.
Takuma Inoue holding the WBA, Junto Nakatani holding the WBC, Yoshiki Takei holding the WBO, and Ryosuke Nishida holding the IBF. Now, the last 2, these are less experienced fighters and less experienced champions than the aforementioned 2, than either Takuma or Junto.
Takuma and Junto got a lot more fights than the other 2 do.
And Takuma and Junto really would be the number 1 versus number 2 guys at this weight. What would be ideal would be a tournament between them. Maybe Takuma fights Ryosuke and maybe Junto fights Yoshiki.
And then the winners fight each other in order to crown an undisputed champion at this weight. Moreover, if Junto were to face Takuma and he beat him, that would set up an Inoue fight, a Naoya Inoue fight. That would set the stage for that.
Junto Nakatani speaking on a potential fight with Naoya Inoue, the sooner the better, if possible. However, I feel that in order to make such a big fight happen, I need to increase my status. I want to do my best and make this important fight a reality. I would like to fight him at the best possible time. So, in order to do that, I think it would be necessary for me to unify the bantamweight division or win a world title at a 4th weight class. I think it will take a little more time to reach that goal, but I want to do my best.
He's right.
I firmly believe that Junto Nakatani is the best in show at 118 pounds right now, that you could put him in the ring with any of the other champions at the weight and he would beat them all. Following in Naoya Inoue's footsteps, he has all the makings of this division's next undisputed champion. And if he does that, he becomes undisputed like Inoue became undisputed. If he does that, if he beats Inoue's brother, that really does set the stage for a big Japanese showdown between Junto Nakatani and Naoya Inoue.
In case you're not familiar,
Junto held the WBO at flyweight, the WBO at super flyweight, and he currently holds the WBC title at bantamweight. So he's already a 3-division champion.
he's already very accomplished and he's on the right track.
Sporting a professional record of 27 wins with no losses, no draws, 20 knockouts. Very big for this weight. Even though he's at 118 pounds now, if you've seen Junto Nakatani and you're aware of his physical dimensions, there's a very credible argument that physically, he might be more adequately suited to one day move up to featherweight than Inoue is, because this is a very big kid for these weights.
What?
That even though Junto's at 118 and Inoue's at 122, if you've seen Junto, you'll know he's very big for these weights. He's got a big frame, big enough. He might be more adequately suited to one day move up to 126 than Inoue is, because Inoue's really not a big guy.
Junto is. For these weights, he's got a much bigger frame than Inoue.
But let's not put the cart before the horse, worrying about what happens when those 2 guys go to 126, when currently there are 4 champions at 126, and they need to fight each other.
Forget about them. Forget about that for now.
So Junto Nakatani is set to defend his WBC title in July against Vincent Astrolabia, who I have no doubts he's going to knock out. I believe this fight is going to go the same way the Maloney fight did.
Maybe worse.
I think Junto is going to knock out Vincent in violent fashion the same way he did Andrew Maloney, in less time.
After that,
Unifications. I give Junto Nakatani about a year to a year and a half to unify this division and become its undisputed champion. And in a year to a year and a half, Inoue might still be there at 122. He might.
yesterday, Inoue was right here in the US of
Our
A.
tonight, Since I don't speak English very well, please allow me to finish the speech in Japanese.
In attendance for the Boxing Writers of America Awards,
rubbing elbows with the likes of former 3-division champion Jorge Linares, the delicious Amanda Serrano.
Oh, here we go. Where's go ahead, you can get to it.
And here in America, there's a feeling that Inoue should have to move up in weight, move all the way up from 122 up to 135 for a Gervonta Davis fight. There are these people, they want to see him do that.
What I interpret is a bunch of Americans who can't think of an American at Inoue's weight that can beat him, so they're asking him to do something that they would never ask an American fighter to do, something they would never ask Gervonta Davis to do.
What?
Well, Naoya Inoue hasn't been at 122 pounds for a full year. It hasn't even been a year yet since he moved up there, whereas Gervonta, it's been upwards of 5 years since he moved up to 135. They're not urging him to go to welterweight or junior middle.
What?
That for urging a 122-pounder who hasn't even been at 122 pounds for a full year yet, why aren't you urging Gervonta to go to welterweight? Why aren't you urging him to go to junior middle?
Gervonta moved up from 130 up to 135 5 years ago. He's been there since 2019. He hasn't even had a unification match.
After 5 years at that same weight.
What, you'd rather see Gervonta fight someone so much smaller than he is? For what reason? Because he stands a better chance of winning? Because you're scared of what'll happen if he fights a Shakur Stevenson?
You guys are a bunch of fucking cowards.
What does any of this have to do with Junto?
That I don't see any reason for Naoya Inoue, who's already at his 4th weight, to either rush up to 126 or rush up to 135 when there's a potential mega fight right there between him and Junto.
That fight would break records in Japan.
That fight commercially would be bigger than any fight he could have at 126.
Perhaps not bigger than a Gervonta Davis fight,
but not riskier either. My honest opinion, the reason people want Inoue to take that big risk is because they want to see him get beat while simultaneously protecting Gervonta, as if Gervonta is any kind of a risk taker.
He's a pussy and so are you.
That if you have a mammoth fight, a potential whale of a fight, in a Junto Nakatani, right there where you already campaign, why would you move up?
When did Americans become such fucking cowards?
I mean, seriously, it's mostly Americans urging Inoue to fight these guys that are so much bigger than he is when he just got to his 4th weight.
You don't got none of that energy. You don't put none of that pressure on them, but you put it on him even though he's smaller.
The guys at 126, there are literally 4 champions at 126. I think they should be unifying with each other before worrying about a super bantamweight.
There
are enough fighters, enough champions, and enough contenders at your own weight that your fans should be urging you to fight them, not a super bantamweight.
Shit is pathetic.
The walls are closing in on Gervonta, so much so they're actually pushing for him to fight a 122-pounder. How sad is that?
Ridiculous is more like it.
The way I see it, that Junto Nakatani fight is a monster. That's a whale of a fight in Japan.
Big enough that you don't need to be in a hurry to go to 126, much less 135.
And if the Americans don't like it, well, who gives a fuck about the Americans?
World of Boxing stopped listening to you clowns a long time ago.
As it pertains to another fighter who may end up making a dramatic jump of his own, a dramatic leap in weight himself, well, Alexander Usyk has declared that he believes Terence Crawford would beat Canelo Alvarez. Terence is my friend, but he's a crazy man. I say Terence wins. Listen, Terence is a different man. Terence works in 2 stances. He's a very, very, very smart man.
Some might feel so inclined to ask, well, why are you against Inoue versus Davis, but you're all right with this? You're all right with a Crawford versus Canelo fight.
The biggest difference is that it's Terence Crawford pushing for the fight, where Inoue's not the one pushing for a Gervonta Davis fight. Crawford is the one pushing for a Canelo fight.
He wants it.
I'm not putting any pressure on Terence Crawford to move all the way up to 168 like he has to do it, and if he doesn't, he's no good. He's a hype job, because that's what people are saying about Inoue.
They're tearing him down.
Marginalizing his accomplishments, his accolades, his contribution to the Asian boxing scene. They're tearing him down on the premise that he doesn't move all the way up to 135.
I ain't doing that to Crawford.
And that's the difference. I myself would be perfectly content with Terence Crawford staying right there at 154 and fighting the champions that are there. But if he himself wants to move up to 168 because he wants to fight Canelo, all I'm saying is, I'd watch it. He doesn't have to do it, but if he does it...
I'll buy that for $1.
Usyk thinks he wins.
Why?
When I imagine that fight between Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, what stands out is that even though it's a big leap, a very big jump for Terence Crawford to potentially go from 154 up to 168, he's not going up to 168 for a guy who's 5'10", a 5'11", a 6 feet, 6'2". No, Canelo is a very small guy.
For super middleweight.
Of course, he's a naturally bigger guy than Terence, naturally heavier, but he's not taller or longer.
That's what makes it negotiable.
That's what makes it negotiable. That Canelo's not a particularly big super middleweight, as well as Canelo not throwing that many punches in a round. No, Canelo is a quality over quantity kind of guy. He picks his punches, and he picks his punches very well.
But he doesn't waste punches, and he doesn't throw punches for the sake of throwing punches. Canelo is not a volume puncher.
So, because Canelo's not actually taller or longer than Terence, and he doesn't throw all that many punches within a round, that he's not that prolific, that's where the question mark lies. In that situation against that particular fighter at 168, can Terence Crawford win, or does Terence get himself knocked out? And I'm not making any bold proclamations. I'm not saying with an absolute certitude that either Terence wins or Canelo wins. I'm saying that's a fight that captures the imagination because it's hard to imagine one guy losing to the other.
They're both so good. Top 5, pound for pound.
Usyk thinks Crawford wins, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's what he sees. That the situation is negotiable enough in terms of physicality and styles that Terence might be able to pull it off.
Stylistically, I'd give Crawford the edge based on styles. He's got the right style for a guy like Canelo, but
physically, you have to give the edge to Canelo because he's battle-tested at these weights. He's been fighting naturally bigger men than himself, much bigger than Terence Crawford, and he's never been knocked down. He's never been knocked out. I've seldom ever seen him hurt.
Then how would Terence Crawford beat him?
His best bet would be counterpunching, being a little faster, a little sharper, and hitting Canelo with punches he doesn't see. Not necessarily because it'll hurt Canelo, but because it'll make him tentative.
Hesitant.
If the guy's getting through, and when you go to throw a shot, you get popped in the face, it's not so much the concussive power, but the fact you didn't see it coming.
It can make you hesitant.
Though once again, I'm not saying with an absolute certitude that Crawford wins that fight or Canelo wins that fight. And I certainly ain't putting no pressure on Crawford to do it. He doesn't have to do it. He can stay right there at 154 as far as I'm concerned.
That's the difference.
Between this and Gervonta Davis's fans urging Inoue to move up to fight him, Canelo's fans aren't urging Terence Crawford to move up to fight him.
Terence Crawford is the one that wants to do it.